in general, I feel like I grew up being kind of on and off with like my self-image just because of lack of representation growing up. At first I feel like I wasn't that all that into beauty, but as I started to get a little bit more into it, I started to like recognize a little bit of like lack of representation, and therefore I felt like I didn't like live up to certain beauty standards. Also just primarily growing up around like a lot of, I guess, like white people in general. I feel like there was a little bit of an imbalance of like my self-image and my self-worth in that sense as well.
I have two older sisters, so I kind of followed their lead a lot of the times, like makeup and things like that. Also, growing up, my mom like loves getting dolled up, but she loves pretty dresses, doing her makeup. So growing up, I had a pretty like positive image of it. I didn't really start wearing makeup or do things like that till like middle schoolish, so I had a pretty positive relationship with it.
Probably say very troubled, but I think that has more to do with the fact that I grew up in an area where most people didn't look like me and my own family didn't look like me. So that really impacted like my own self-image.
I think it was something that like fluctuated and also was just very dependent on the environment. So like those who were around me, like the prominent female figures, were the ones that I set my standards to as a little kid. And then when I moved on and got social media and like had a phone, then it started to become like how do I set myself compared to like those I see on social media, like the models and people like that.
Yeah, like in the what is the word, corporate? Yeah, like corporate, because there's not a lot of people that look like me in my field.
I would say I have. I grew up in a pretty like predominantly white area, so even like little comments being made like I don't look like other girls in the grade, or like being pressured to act a certain way or just a certain way so I could fit in.
Just again, like where I wasn't seeing a lot of people that looked like me in my area, as well as the fact that no one in like major media also looked like me. So that sort of put me in this, I guess, frame of mind, or like this idea that like I should change myself to fit them rather than like accept the fact that I'm not even in the same box.
Definitely. I mean, I think growing up in Nepal, but then living here, there are definitely very different beauty standards at play. So I think in South Asia and in Nepal, I want to say overall people are less shallow. So, it doesn't matter so much that, your teeth aren't completely straight. They're not like super white. Your hair is not like shiny and straightened or whatever. And I think it's, I guess, more culture, like what things people focus on. So I feel like coming from that type of environment to the US, I definitely felt there was an expectation that I should look a little bit different. I think it's also like a function of time. I think things are so globalized now because of social media and technology. There was a time when everybody wanted to be super skinny. There was a time when, everybody did not want to be skinny. So I think I've definitely felt the pressures both ways over time.
Yeah, again, most of the time when I was younger, just because I didn't have like a real sense of self, but mainly just because of what I was seeing on like main media.
Yeah, I feel like the major example for me was growing up, I played a lot of sports, so I would spend a lot of time outside. And obviously, like, I'm a brown woman, I would go outside, I would get a little bit more tan. That was seen as something like looked down upon, not necessarily by my immediate family, but when I would hang around like my aunties and uncles, like that would be like one of the first things that they would point out. It's like, you've gotten so dark. And they would normally say it in like sort of a negative light, and I didn't really understand that at the time, why that was like such a negative thing, until I started kind of doing my own research about like what exactly the beauty standards are in a South Asian like cultural perspective. And then I started to kind of like, I internalized that a little bit more. I started to also look at myself. I was like, why am I like getting so dark? Like, I didn't like how I looked in that like sense. But I didn't think that took away from like my love of like sports at the time. But it kind of, I guess, like broadened my perspective of what I guess like skin tone, like what like beauty standards within like skin tone specifically are, in a South Asian like culturalist perspective.
100%. I feel like when I was younger, there would be people that would talk about like just make like comments or like jokes about like skin tone or like what's acceptable and not. So I think that definitely affected me, like deep rooted, not anything like super present, but like it's like ingrained in my mind.
My family calls me Gali, which is like a nickname for like darker skin tone, as a joke because I was so pale. And so it wasn't like a way to like diss at my skin tone, but at the same time, like indirectly it is. And also as a, like a little girl, you see like I'd see all these family members who have darker skin tones than me. So that was like a little bit of a thing where I was like, oh, like why is my skin tone so much lighter? Like I feel like it isn't exactly like the standard to have like darker skin tone. I feel like that's what's been like a big thing in like India and like Nepal to have more fair skin tones, but because of so many people around me being more darker skin toned, I just felt like that was the standard and I wasn't reaching that.
Yes, I would say so. Again, my cultural upbringing is very different than what like my ethnicity should match. So that had like a very large impact on how I view myself and view others. Just because like my family is white, and so they grow up white and Southern. My mom's from the South. So that she grew up with a very different mentality about like beauty standards and like even perception of skin color, and politics and stuff like that very differently than what I grew up with and what I believe now as like an adult as well.
So my mom's side of the family, like we range in shades. So I always knew like, hey, every shade is beautiful. But there were like certain times where like I have cousins who are darker than me, and like I would always emphasize like you're beautiful, because if they like, you know, watch TV or whatever, they're not gonna see accurate representation, or like they might feel a certain way about, oh, I need to look this certain way. But also like bleaching is kind of a big thing, and I would like to say like a bunch of communities, right? And so our mom, she's always like, don't do it. So I never felt like I had to. So yeah.
Definitely. I feel like being or just African in general, like a lot of times like our parents or like aunties and uncles, like they favorite lighter skinned people, or like people like I guess thinner, like I guess the attractiveness of a woman is like, oh, if you're lighter tone and like you're slim basically. But yeah.
I think they definitely use colorism to build and market products, right? Like fairness creams, even, you know, like foundations that help a person look one way or another. And like on the other side of it, it's like people tan, like they get spray tans or they like self tan to look darker. So I think like on both of these sides, the beauty industry is kind of profiting from colorism.
I think it like forces, it doesn't force, but I think it really plays into effect how girls perceive themselves, especially with like curly hair and like skin tones that aren't as commonly advertised on like makeup products and makeup brands. They see themselves as like something different, and they feel like they have to change it because they aren't like living up to the standard, which can really take a toll on like self-esteem and self-confidence. And then that kind of feel like that like really starts in like puberty, and then it kind of just turns into something bigger as they get older and older.
It's prevalent in every culture, unfortunately, like even in cultures with like Black culture, and it really sucks because I think everyone's beautiful and you shouldn't bleach your skin. I know friends who have aunties who are pink because they like bleach their skin. It's so sad. And it just shows like, dang, we're all affected by it. Yeah.
I feel like it's harder to find. Well, I can only really speak for makeup, or actually even hair too. Like, when you look at like wigs and stuff, like you'll notice like people sell a lot of like looser like curl types instead of like 4C. Like it's really hard to find if you're like any type 4 girl. Like it's really hard to find like a type 4 like wig or like a type 4 like bundles to get into your hair, like to match your hair type, and like you'll have to get like, I don't know, Brazilian body wave and like be burning your scalp and get like heat damage at the end of the day, which is weird. But,
I feel like the one that sticks out to me in my head right now is there was like an influencer trip for Tarte. I think it was like, I don't know when, like maybe like 2018, 2019, something like that. Something when I was in like high school and I was like just kind of like getting into beauty. And it was like a big thing because it was like they mostly brought on white influencers onto this trip. And then those influencers that are there, like people of color, were like left out a lot of times, or they weren't really seen in like the vlogs or like the commercials or whatever like that came out of that trip. And then at that time, I feel like because I was like kind of getting, I guess, like into beauty and like kind of like finding my like place within that space specifically. And then also like just like as a consumer, I feel like I was like, what brand should I like even be buying from? Because I don't feel like represented, I guess, like from that specific brand. I was just kind of like lost. I was like, what brands like should I be seeing myself in? Because I didn't see a lot of that just like growing up in general.
So I remember when I first started wearing makeup, all my friends wore e.l.f. concealer. So I'm thinking, okay, like I'm gonna follow them, like I'm gonna go too. And I remember this day so clearly where I went with them to Target and I could not find a concealer for me. Like either they were too dark or my undertone, things like that. And like it was just a really embarrassing feeling. Like all of them were able to pick out what they wanted so quickly, and like I was there because I didn't buy anything that day. So kind of like it didn't make me feel good. I remember that was my first time I was like, hey, like what's going on? Like how come like people like me aren't included like in such a broader scheme as well? Like it was one thing within like my immediate community, but then now like on a global scale as well, like it's very eye-opening for me.
I think Fenty Beauty, e.l.f. does a pretty good job now that I'm thinking about it. Shea Moisture does, Not Your Mother's. Those are the top ones I can think of.
The Black Girl sunscreen, love them because there's no white cast, you know, when you put it on. And even like my Latino friends wear it too because they don't want a white cast. For makeup, oh, Juvia's Place also. See, I don't know my makeup, but I know like their stuff actually shows up, and I'm like, nice. Yeah. But yeah.
I'm gonna say, maybe e.l.f. I feel like, cause it's not only like do they have like a really good like shade of like range. I mean, yeah, shade range. Like it's really affordable to like honestly anyone. It's for all, I guess, budgets.
The way that they probably like promote certain products, and I think the spread of like knowledge, because like of course not everything is gonna fit a certain skin tone or a certain like eye shape or a certain like hair texture, but I think instead of just completely excluding people with, you know, those features isn't right. So instead they should work more on like advocacy and information, right? So like if you have a certain skin tone, like figuring out what kind of undertones you have and then trying to tailor certain products to these more diverse range of like skin colors.
I think just having brands talking about it and not just putting it on the influencers and not just being like, yeah, I agree with this whenever an influencer takes a stand on colorism or says something that people haven't really thought of or said out loud to social media rather than just being like, yeah, I agree with this. Like, say it yourself. Like, make sure your brand represents your value of whatever you value, but like make it clear rather than just being like on the sideline cheering somebody on.
You have to look at things as not always being so black and white, I feel like. um I guess, like, you know, things have gotten better, I feel like, since like when I grew up. Like, that was a time where I feel like there was like a little bit more like strict definition of like what makes someone beautiful. I feel like there's like a lot of like progression right now. um and just because like I feel like you don't see yourself represented in like one space doesn't mean that you won't find a space eventually that you do feel represented in. um and I feel like a lot of it is just about like embracing certain like features of yourself, and like whatever you might see as like a weakness, someone else will see as like a strength.
Block out all that noise. You're beautiful the way you are.
I would say, like, obviously don't look up to the standards and don't be comparing yourself to others. And like I feel like there are so many other like affirmations I could give them, but at the same time I think like taking it day by day and like learning to look at yourself in the mirror and being like appreciative of your features and how like beautiful they are, it takes time. And I think that like guiding them along that process could help, but at the end of the day, like it's gonna take time for everybody, especially for like little girls and adolescents who are trying to like change their look or like learn what fits them the most, and they're just going through this weird period where it's like everything feels weird to them.
You're beautiful. Like, don't listen to that silly little ad, or like, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, you're beautiful. Like, no matter how bad it gets, just, you're beautiful.
I think in the United States, we still tailor to the majority. Mm-hmm. And it's like our frame of mind is so like US centric. Mm-hmm. And that's reflected in the way that we promote our products, the products that we do promote, the diversity within various products, not just limited to like the beauty industry itself. And so having a more globalized mindset in terms of understanding and being exposed to different people mm-hmm. and different cultures and the way that things are done, and learning to accept that rather than just sort of dismiss or diminish other people's like cultures or the way that they do things or the way that they look, would benefit everybody overall, I think.
I feel like a lot of it comes with just like education. Not a lot of people, I guess, are aware that they're contributing to it, which is why I feel like that's another reason why it's so important to just like have those people like behind the scenes and just like, I guess, like working on a certain project for like a company, for example. I feel like the more like education there is around it, the less damage it will do in the future.
I mean, I think for a lot of people, experiencing and living in diverse communities goes a long way towards internalizing that, you know, different people look different and have different strengths, different features, and there shouldn't be sort of a monolithic definition of beauty. So I think we continue to build diverse communities, diverse workplaces, and I think that will go a long way towards, you know, ensuring there are products that work for a wide range of people. There's like messaging that works for a wide range of people, and there's just understanding of the fact that you know, beauty is very subjective and you can find beauty in everyone and everything, and there no one should be, you know, made to feel uncomfortable in their own skin and like devalued because of it.
Probably taking it like disassociating beauty from like your image and more so like about like characteristics about yourself rather than just like what you look like.
I would think maybe like, I guess maybe try not to define it at all. I feel like when you put certain words or certain like standards to it, that's when things get tricky. So just like truly just remembering that beauty comes from within, it comes from yourself. Like everything starts like when you're mental. Like if you truly believe that you are beautiful, that's all that matters. Like you don't have to define it. You don't have to let anyone else understand it. Like what's understood doesn't have to be said.